I think that it's time to finally reveal the mystery car that's here at the Shmuseum. What could possibly be underneath that cover? This has actually been here while my BMW 1M was over at Whoops Will Fix It to paint the wheels in neodyme gold. It was also here when Rob came down with the R34 Skyline, the Fast and Furious tribute car that we took out for a drive. Plus, while we did the latest episode of Building My Dream Garage, putting all of the pictures, paintings and posters up on the wall, and you've noticed it in the background. But from most angles, it wasn't quite so obvious. I just think that maybe now this is a bit of a dead giveaway. Not only is this obviously a very small car, but it's a car with intent. I mean, that's a dead giveaway right here. There's a big fixed wing on the back. In fact, a wing with swan neck mounts. There's a lot of carbon fiber. The wing, even the rear window is replaced with carbon. The wheels, skirts, bucket seats, everything. This is the kind of car which on the countryside lanes around here, as I go out for my first drive in just a moment, is going to be a whole lot of fun. A sneak peek then at what's underneath. Lovely paintwork, lots of carbon. Let's go around front and pull this cover off. I'm sure by now that you have worked out exactly what this is, but let's get the cover pulled off and reveal what is here at the Shmuseum. This is the Alpine A110R. The A110R builds on Alpine's lightweight, sports, dynamic, driver-focused car. In fact, the A110 appeared originally about 5 or 6 years ago. The first time it featured on the channel was actually when my friend Benzine Ben went out for the press drive to get behind the wheel to experience what the regular car was about. The A110S followed, the GT as well with a facelift, but this is the R. Less weight, more money, and a whole new experience. And this is the car that I'm about to take out. Now, the second time I spent some time around an Alpine was actually on Gumball 3000, Toronto to Miami, 2022, when we were chasing the guys in the Gendarmerie Alpine, a car not available in the United States at all. But did you know, Gordon Murray actually daily drives an A110, and there's got to be a reason for that. If Gordon Murray thinks these things are good, there's probably something special about them. Hi guys, I'm Shmee, hello, and welcome back to the channel where today I'm heading out for a first drive in the Alpine A110R. Firstly, what is this thing doing here, and why has it been sitting in the background and not yet been driven? Well, before we get to all the details of it, and I want to take you through all of the carbon fiber on this because it is quite extreme. If you know anything about my collection of cars, I like my lightweight track-focused beasts. Things like the 675 LT Spider, things like the AMG GT Black Series, even the Shelby GT500 does away with the rear seats, adds a whole load of carbon fiber. This is that process to the Alpine A110. In fact, this car is 34 kilos lighter than the A110S at a curb weight including some fuel and a driver, of only 1,084 kilos. As modern cars go, this is unbelievably light. Now, to make it significantly lighter than the standard car, they have changed a lot of things. Like, as I mentioned, the carbon fiber replacing the rear window in its entirety, along with the wheels, the roof, and so much more. And we're going to go through all of that in a moment. But effectively, it's a car that weighs under 1,100 kilos with 300 horsepower, 296 brake horsepower, from a 1.8 litre turbo 4-pot mounted mid-rear. It's effectively a little baby mid-engine sports car, but with quite the price tag, because these things, at their base price, are about £96,000, £97,000. Throw on some options, and you're a little over £100,000 for the Alpine. Now, there's more to it. Come and take a look, for example, inside here, where you have carbon fiber buckets and 6-point harnesses. There are no 3-point seatbelts in this. That's what you get. It is about extreme, enjoyable, dynamic driving experience. It is about being the kind of car that I so often rave about. And locally to here, we've got some lovely countryside lanes to go and drive down, and this will be exactly in its element. So I want to show you a little bit more about the spec of it, and then it will be time to get it out on the road. The question then is, how did Alpine take the already pretty lightweight A110 and the A110S and make this, the A110R, another 30 kilos lighter? And a big part of the answer is extensive use of carbon fiber. We've got the carbon fiber bonnet, we've got a carbon lip splitter, we've got carbon fiber wheels, the carbon side skirts, we've got a carbon fiber roof, the carbon fiber engine bay cover. There's actually a different design for the rear carbon wheels. We've got the carbon diffuser, we've got a carbon fiber wing, wing. We've also got a lighter weight exhaust system. We've got the carbon fiber bucket seats inside. We've got the 6-point harnesses, and it all adds up incredibly impressively. To run through it, the hood, the bonnet, this panel alone saves 2.6 kilos. The wheels, as a set of 4, which are also mounted with Michelin Pilot Sport Cup 2 tyres, save, in terms of unsprung mass, 12.5 kilos. That's really impressive, although I'm not going to lie, from my experiences of owning my GT500 with carbon wheels and the Zenvo with carbon wheels, you're constantly living in fear of something happening to them as a result, and how delicate they are. We do, however, have the carbon fibre engine bay, and you'll notice that means we have no rear window. There isn't even a camera and screen system, because that would add complexity, weight and expense. So this is replaced just with carbon to save 4 kilos. A touch of weight is added on by the extra aerodynamics and the new suspension, in fact, which adds 1.2 kilos. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But you save some with the reworked sports exhaust system, 0.7 kilos coming out from that. Come to the inside, and these bucket seats from Seabelt are actually 2.5 kilos lighter each than the standard seat, so we've got 5 kilos there. Having the 6-point harnesses and no 3-point seatbelt at all, that's your only option, saves another 1.5 kilos, along with 9 kilos of extra miscellaneous items. For example, there's no passenger airbag, because if you're in harnesses, you're not moving forwards from the seat anyway, so why add the weight? It's all as lightweight, stripped out, as they could possibly do it. I said we'd come back to talk about the suspension, because this is a big change. In fact, the standard ride height versus the A110S is lowered by 10 millimeters, 1 centimeter. But what you have now are manually adjustable dampers. So there are 20 different clicks. You can do all sorts of customization to it, which is all about the type of driving we're about to go and do. Not only that, there's a lot more downforce. In fact, the total addition is 29 kilos more at the front, and with the wing at the back and the way that it's mounted and installed, a total of 110 kilos of additional downforce at the back. Now, when you factor into account the weight of the car, the performance levels of the car, these are quite significant numbers. So ultimately, what that means is you've got something that will really glue itself to the tarmac and is very much suited for the kind of driving I love, and arguably didn't need more power than its predecessor, because the changes and improvements that come from elsewhere should, in theory, 2 + 2 become 4. Let's go find out what the Alpine A110R is like to drive. I have to immediately say that this thing feels like a little race car. Of course, the seating position is incredibly low to the ground. The harnesses hold you in securely. I keep looking up towards the non-existent rear view mirror, but it's so small and you actually have good visibility, so that quickly doesn't become a problem. In terms of the drive though, of course it's not the loudest, shoutiest thing in the world. It's exceptionally pointy. As you go into any corner, the smallest of hand inputs. Of course, we've got carbon fiber wheels, very conscious of that, and I'm sure I end up sitting a little bit further from the curb as a result. So that's in normal mode. On the steering wheel, one press of the sport button turns it into sport. Of course, in automatic with a 7-speed dual clutch, that will just drop it down a gear or two, but it also makes a few more sounds. I am going to go into manual though, because on the topic of sound, this is one of those things that people have differing opinions on. It makes a lot of these very artificial pop, 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 every time 4 pops and bangs behind you. One thing I've noticed though is you quickly feel the speed creeping up. It doesn't have this sense of going exceptionally fast, but it is about being power to weight, about having a lot of power considering the weight and size of the thing. As we go through some more exciting corners ahead, it's really going to come into its own, but for here, it has that fun turbo noise going on behind you. And it feels exciting. It feels a little edgy. It feels a little wild, a little bit different, a little bit like a special occasion type thing. And I'm sure the harnesses are a big part of that. You can't have this car with both. It's the 6 points. That's what you've got to deal with. But for English lanes like this, and I tell you, the ride is actually really quite nice here as well. This is a chopped up bit of tarmac, but it dampens quite well over it. It's not as rough and crashy as some of the bigger cars are. This is Lotus or GT4 territory. This is cheaper than a GT4 RS, but more, oh, nice. That was a Gallardo Superleggera with Performante stripes. It threw me for a second. Didn't expect to see that. But these kinds of roads, this thing is absolutely at home. It's so nimble and direct and lightweight. Just those sounds, as I mentioned, that might get on your nerves a little bit if you're in sport mode. Very small inputs. It's almost, I want to say, Ferrari-esque in this way. Just everything is quite snappy and responsive. The pedals, the steering, the whole setup of it and feel. On the other hand, a press and hold of the sport button, and we also have track mode. Now, of course, they're manually adjustable suspension dampers, so it's not that that's changing the ride in any way. You have to get out and click away at the manual adjustment to do that. But what it does do is make a little bit more noise, a little bit more responsive, a little bit more lively, even more character. And I feel like that's something this thing has in absolute droves immediately. It's not the noisiest thing in the world. It's not the most, let's say, dramatic thing in the world, but it's got a lot of grip. As we go through some of these corners, it just stays absolutely planted. It doesn't give that sense of speed though. That's something I really notice. I'm going at a decent rate down here compared to some other cars I might drive, especially because it's just so small and easy to thread down. You know, this is a road which in big cars, you feel like stuff coming towards you is actually really quite narrow and a little bit scary. But in here, away we go, and it's plenty of power, 300 horsepower. Normally, I would say for this kind of driving, the sweet spot is more like 400, but this helps being, what, 200 or 300 kilos lighter than pretty much anything else it competes with, so it doesn't need to have as much power. Literally, if you're taking away a fifth or a quarter of the weight, why not go with a little bit less power? I would like a little bit more engine character for sure. That would be the absolute icing on the cake of it for me, but I tell you what, it gets a move on down here. M2, very much a suitable car for this kind of road as well. As things open up a little bit, the steering is really phenomenal, and it's a car that perhaps on paper doesn't make any sense. Why would you pay over £100,000 for something that has so much plastic inside in terms of the buttons that doesn't feel like a really premium contender to others in its price point? Well, the answer is because of the character and because of how fun it is. And down here, now that we're on the really narrow, twisty stuff, this is hot hatch territory, except this is a little sports car, a little mid-engined, rear-driven sports car, and it is absolutely at home at it. This is really, really quite fun. This is where you need to come with an A110R. This is where it needs to be driven. It's fun shifting mid-range as well. You don't feel like you have to ring it out, and I always prefer cars which carry some excitement without needing to be at the red line. If you have to really ring it out, you often feel like it's just too much, especially in any sports car. I mean, even this is capable of exceeding speed limits exceptionally quickly, right? Even this is going to get you into a lot of trouble very, very, very fast because of the way you want to drive it. You want to grab it right by the reins. You want to go out and throw it down a road like this. And kind of need to watch those things. So I do quite like that, actually. Good excitement out of it. Empty road ahead. It feels like a little race car. It really does. I think that's the best way to describe this. I'm actually genuinely surprised by how normally you get this kind of experience spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on a supercar, and this brings it at a much lower price point, relatively speaking. It's a lot of money for what it is. There's no denying that. If you think about spending about 106, 107,000 pounds realistically on one of these, that's a big old commitment to a little French car at the end of the day. It's a lot of cash, but on the other hand, what it is something you won't see many of. It's not specifically limited per a specific number, I believe. There are 100 special A110R Le Mans editions. There are the 32 Fernando Alonso editions to celebrate the 32 wins that he's had as well. And of course, it links to the BWT Alpine F1 team as well with the special paint and the design of the car as well. But down here, where honestly I like coming here because it's a bit of a test for a car. Uneven, unsettles it, very narrow, rough ground, exactly where you want to put it through its paces and see what it actually does for you. And I tell you what, it's handling it remarkably well, but this is exactly where this thing is at home. And sometimes it's about the right car and the right environment. The braking is also very, very confident. Of course, being very light helps in a big way with that, keeps it super under control. G63 down there, barreling down. Yeah, I am quite enjoying this drive, a little bit edgy, decent pace to it. but a lot of fun. At the end of the day, isn't that what driving a sports car is all about? You don't buy a car like this because you need it, because it's more practical than another car. You buy a car like this because it's fun to drive, it's enjoyable, puts a smile on your face, and if you do find yourself somewhere like this, you can just go out and have a blast. Let's have a little debate about gearboxes for a second, because of course, these kinds of cars are often the kinds of cars that drivers want with a manual, which is exactly what I have in the Emira, in the 1M, in the Clio V6, lots of cars that I enjoy driving on these kinds of roads, because to be honest, it's exactly what it's about here in the UK. This is the kind of driving we have a lot of when you're not sitting on the motorway. This is only an automatic. It's a very good automatic. The dual clutch transmission actually over a regular auto is genuinely really nice. And as you can hear, it makes a nice upshift beep when you get to the red line. And it gets the power down nicely. I've got a lot of grip, Cup 2R tyres, sorry, Cup 2 tyres, not Rs, obviously helping to reinforce that. And it makes these nice sort of burps almost on upshift. Now, those downshifts, it's the exact same sound every single shift, which is of course computers at play. It's doing something artificial. At least it's sound outside, but it's still like, I don't know. I go backwards and forwards on this. I know a lot of people do as well. Sometimes you're in the mood for it, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't. Cruising now though, actually, let's pop it back into, do we go to sport and then down to normal? And I like the little French flag that I've got in the middle of the dashboard as well, at the bottom under the PRND. In regular auto, regular normal driving, this is super chill. This is super calm, and it's not too rough. It's not too aggressive, bumpy, and uncomfortable. I thought it would probably be stiffer and less pleasant, we could say, for the kinds of driving that we've just been doing, but it's actually really quite compliant, drives it pretty well, and that's obviously something that you want from this type of thing. I mean, I'm literally just cruising right now. I haven't tried the sound system. There's a small little screen in the middle for Android Auto, CarPlay, that type of stuff, but kind of have that in the standby mode, because at the end of the day, not here for that right now. We do have a sound system. We don't have a completely destroyed interior in terms of a usable road car. Hasn't taken away the audio system, hasn't taken away the air conditioning. Those are the kind of things that real life, yes, some cars allow you to order them without, but it's much more pleasant if you do have them. It's much more like a car you're actually going to drive, right? And I say that about harnesses because that's an interesting topic. A car with harnesses changes use a lot, because it's not just jump in it and away you go in the same way. If I manually downshift in normal mode, yeah, it takes away the pops. They're gone. Just the 1.8 turbo 4-pot making it sounds behind us. Yeah, the steering is really nice. Super pinpoint. I like that a lot. If you want to go into manual, you press drive again. That will keep it in manual. What are we in right now? Let's go back into sport mode. Drop down some gears as we join the motorway here. On the throttle. It's not like the fastest thing in the world, but it's also no slouch. You know, it's got more than enough poke. We're going to have the tunnel in front of us, where hopefully we're going to be able to hear a little bit of these pops if I were to put the window down, but I don't really know how loud they actually are. Let's go down just a touch, see what we can hear of this. We start downshifting, because who doesn't like taking a sports car through a tunnel? You don't really hear it. It's actually surprisingly quiet. I can hear them, but I'm sure they don't carry through on the microphone. Needs an exhaust. This is a different exhaust to the standard car already, but it needs more of an exhaust. Hey, it's just the way things are. I do like the upshift sound like that though, when you're on the load. Nobody right behind me here. Slow it down. And second gear. Wait for it. Auto upshifts at the red line though. Got the auto upshifts going on. Or just go back into normal mode, cruise away. The sound that this thing just made was a very pleasant surprise. So that's the dashboard in track mode. If I turn it down, that's what it looks like in sport, and then down one more, that's what you get in normal. You can hear the revs slightly change as well when you go into sport.
lifts them a little bit. I like that it's quite dramatically different and nicely animated as well when you switch it backwards and forwards. The start-stop button down here in the center, we will just shut this off for the time being. Nice little graphics there. I like that. Good to see. That's a standard car though, not an A110R, so they didn't change that, just the logo on the left-hand side. So a little bit more of the inside. These painted door uppers are really quite nice, the French flag motifs that you see everywhere. Of course, they've replaced the standard door handles. They've actually left the cutout where it would normally be with these grabs. You've still got the releases up there. Airbag, they haven't changed the dash either. That's still stitched, even though there isn't an airbag hiding away behind it. It's very dark in here, so I'll see if you can make this out. There's basically this little glove box storage back here, very small little storage piece, but you can probably just about squeeze some stuff behind, although it will get in the way of the harnesses, which are obviously mounted directly to the bulkhead. Just trying to feel around. There's a subwoofer back there as well. In the central console, obviously you've got your drive, neutral, reverse buttons, passenger airbag off because it's always off, window switches, cruise controls down here, which is quite an unusual thing. And then down below, there's a little plaque down there, along with some USB plugs, and is that an aux plug as well? And a rubber mat for some storage space as well. This, you can pop your phone in, climate control up here, a couple of switches here like auto stop start, traction control, hazards, screen and standby, obviously your 7-inch display for your infotainment that you have there as well. The shift paddles take some getting used to because they're actually quite a long way round the back. You have to stretch out further than in some of those cars, for example, the ultimate in sports supercars. I do like the very small steering wheel, small grip, feels really nice in the hands, not a lot going on, which is exactly what I like, not cluttered. But on the flip side, that is about the weakest of weak volume control buttons. That stalk down there is not particularly fancy. Doors and generally everything looking pretty nice. Let me climb out. The seats obviously take some getting used to. These carbon buckets, harnesses are good fun, but they are definitely on the firmer end. The key for the car actually comes in this little pouch. There's a plastic key fob inside, which doesn't look great, I've got to be honest. So they give you this nice pouch to house it in instead, but a little bit of storage space. Do I press and hold this? Either way, there's a button underneath here. You can pop open the rear compartment. That's all you get back there. It does actually go far underneath. So you'd get a couple of soft bags in here for sure. Obviously we've got a safety pack and I guess tire inflator in here at the moment. It can probably squeeze some stuff in, and then you also have, if we come round, the front storage, because obviously the engine is in the back, which is down here somewhere. Pull that to release it and head round towards the front. And then in here, if I can find the catch, nicely does it, you can get a decent amount of stuff in there, I would say, for a car of this kind of size. I think it's, overall, how does it compare to the Emira, which is up on the lift? That has a lot more space behind the seats, but no front storage, only the amount at the back, which I think is a touch more than this as well. So overall, I think the Emira has a touch more space than this does. Obviously, even on the underside, full carbon fiber finish that we've got there for the underskin of the front bonnet. You can tell, just obviously it's on the hydraulics, but you can tell that is a lightweight panel. Just one of the things I find quite interesting actually to mention is that when it comes to hypercars, the weave of a hypercar will do something like that in the carbon fiber. You see the way you've got that opposing pattern? The weave of a normal supercar, do I have something with a carbon front at the moment, easily accessible? Not really, but normally you'd have a V pattern. So it would be pointing like this, opposite directions and coming to the center point, like on the wing of the Black Series. On here, of course, it's nice to have the carbon, but it is very much just one layup of carbon the whole way over, so a different type of thing. The drive, though, is what this is about. Like I say, a lot of fun, conscious of those wheels. I did mention earlier the different wheel design that you have, front and rear. I like that it's got the Alpine text on it, the manufacturer, aero wheels with this almost aero disc going on at the back. Great tires, lots of grip. Lots of fun driving on those, always. It's very low to the ground, kind of like that. Do not walk. There's a little mark on here, unfortunately, but that's how it arrived. And the different wheel that you have at the front, carbon wheels. The A110R, wheel specific to this car. Obviously some other changes as well, like the lower lip at the front, as I mentioned earlier, and just general updates. Of course, the whole design of the car I haven't really touched on, but throwback to the Alpines of old, the history of the company. The new car, very much this retro styling with the additional lights. That was always the intention of it, to give you that familiar look that everybody knew of the cars from back in the day, but now combined with this livery, the BWT Alpine F1 satin blue paint, French flag logos, and lots of carbon fibre all over, everywhere, all of the goodies that you have on it, making it extra cool, I think it has to be said. My thoughts then, and don't get me wrong, this is a lot of fun to drive, but £100,000, £100,000 of Alpine in a world where the Emira cost me on the road about 82, so a little more than £20,000 less, and a GT4 similarly was around 80,000 or so new, 90 if you had really spec'd it up. GT4 RS of course takes that significantly higher, about 150 or 160 if you go for a very highly spec'd car in the UK market. What this is though is something a little bit different. I mean, a regular Alpine, any Alpine A110 is a little bit different, is an unusual car with a story. There's a reason why people like Gordon Murray respect these things so much. You know, these are really clever cars in terms of the attention spent on making sure that they're very lightweight, the use of materials, design, basically putting lightweight ahead of throwing power at the problem. You know, a lot of modern cars literally do that, especially with hybridization, with batteries, with electric motors. You can make 1,000 horsepower and it doesn't matter how heavy it is at the end of the day. You can give a car 2,000 horsepower and it doesn't matter because then you've got power to go on through the problem. But what that does is it takes away the direct connection that you have as a driver and the feel that you have, the experience that you have literally driving it, which is what this does in a really fun way. And I think that's my key takeaway, is that this has been, it's a car that if you take it out and drive, you're not going to regret that experience. It's going to be a lot of fun every single time. It's just a whole lot of money. And I've looked at the market just to see where they've landed, and you know, a car that's nearly new is £10,000–15,000 off at this stage. A regular A110 has actually held money quite well. A 4 or 5 year old car has only depreciated around 50%, which actually isn't that bad relative to the norms of cars and what they do, right? Normally you'd have lost that in the first 3 years and then even more by year 4 or 5. So I think it looks cool. It's a quirky thing. Of course, this kind of design is going to appeal to some and not to others. The exposed carbon bonnet is again an acquired taste. Some people don't like that. Some people absolutely love it. But it's about a car that you're just going to go and drive and appreciate the character and the ethos behind it from the engineers. And from that standpoint, it does, it has to be said, a pretty remarkable job. So I've enjoyed this one an awful lot. A big thanks to Alpine here in the UK for the opportunity to go and drive one of the cars from their fleet, to be able to share my experience of it with you. And yeah, just a little bit funny that it ended up living undercover for a while before finally pulling the wraps off to share with you what has been hiding away here at the Shmuseum. So thank you as always for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the video and enjoyed learning a little bit more about the Alpine A110R. That's it for now though. Thanks again for watching and I'll see you soon. Cheers.